What's up, everybody? I am former player Hannibal Navies, and today we are going to have a very candid conversation with some giants of the NFLPA around former player benefits and resources. Very exciting conversation, very candid conversation, but no better way to have it with the three people that we have here today who have a lot of history in the PA, have a lot of history of working with former players, and have done this for years. So I'm excited to have a conversation, but let's get into some introductions first, and then we'll just kind of free flow from there, fellas. Let's start the end with Z.
Sabir Cobb, Executive Director of the Trust.
Nolan Harrison, Senior Director, NFLPA.
Andre Collins, former player, Executive Director of the NFLPA's Professional Athletes Foundation.
So I think it's important for us to talk about the years you guys have put into the PA and been at the PA. So I know we talked about, you guys told your titles, but how long you guys been working at the NFLPA? And I think that's important for guys to know because you guys have a lot of history behind you guys. So.
Yeah, I'll start first with my years because I know I'm gonna get beat out on this one. So I've been at the PA for over 10 years. I think this is my 12th, or within the infrastructure of the PA. As I started with the trust, one of the original 7 staff to help launch the trust in 2013. Transitioned to player director where I worked on the NFLPA side, then back to the trust as managing director and now executive director. It follows the path of someone who hits the Pro Bowl, make a couple All-Pros, and now I'm at the top, you know.
Nice.
So this is the gold jacket.
You made a nice climb, man. I was there. I was there from day one. I was one of the original 7 with you, man. So I've seen you transition to different roles in the NFLPA and circle back around and where you are, man. So that's been good. How has that journey been for you?
It's a great question, brother. The journey has been both fruitful and rewarding. I like to think of myself as mission-driven, not position-driven. And I've been able to serve the mission in a greater way with each role. And I look forward to continue to doing that.
Well, how long you, OG, man, how long you been here?
Well, to be fair, I'm not going to count the years as a player rep and all that stuff because then that would be unfair. But I will say, as of August 2nd, I'll be here for 15 years. So that's the same kind of thing, man. It's just being blessed to be in this position, to be able to watch guys grow and learn and develop and learn from guys who were in it before me with Dre, and just continue to serve our guys has just been a blessing. So 15 is just, well, I'm still here.
Right.
Yeah, and thanks for letting age go before beauty. So this is my 21st year at the NFLPA.
Wow.
And I started at a time when there really wasn't a whole lot other than the benefits packages for former players. But to be able to watch that grow over the years has been amazing. For the last 12 years, I've been focused on being the executive director of the Professional Athletes Foundation, really just trying to create compassion programming for former players.
Right.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't say, like any good team, for one to score, there's 10 other that supports. For one to pick a ball off, there's 10 others to support. And each of the 3 of you has been part of that for me, and I just want to let you know that I appreciate that.
Z. Appreciate that, man. And I think in a day and time right now, we all know there's a lot of things going on in NFLPA, NFL, and things like that. But to have 3 former players here that have been at the PA as long as you guys have is super important for people to know, for our players to know, what you guys do at the union is super important. But I don't think all our former players, especially our former players, that's what you guys specialize in, understand what the work that you guys do on a day-to-day basis. I don't think they understand what is really in place for them, and also differentiating different things that you guys all do to kind of help the players, and also that you guys work together on this. So I think it's important to talk through, because we have this, knowledge here. Let's talk about the history of each of your departments. Like, how did it get started? How did we get here, right? I know it's evolved over time, but how did you guys are head of some departments that are super important, but how did it come about to be, how did it come to be, and what role did you play in that?
And I think that's an important question because we are former players, and there's no doubt our experience as players, active players going to former players, definitely helped shape the way that we do our business. For me, the Professional Athletes Foundation was created before I got to the NFLPA, so more than 30 years ago. And really, the compassion part of that is providing financial assistance to former players. And then also just really trying to inspire players because, let's be honest, it's tough leaving the game, financially, emotionally, all those things, physically. But we really just try and inspire former players to just really understand all the possibilities once you leave the game, all the possibilities of trying to build your second career. So we're just there to support players through that emotionally and financially.
So when it was founded, when was it founded and why was it founded?
I mean, it was originally, the official paperwork was 1985, but the first grant that we gave away was a $1,000 grant to a former player. It was a financial assistance grant to help that player finish college. But since that time, now we probably take about 600 applications a year. We grant about 80%, 75 to 80% of those players get approved for the financial assistance. It's to pay mortgage, it's to pay rent, to pay car notes, some going back to school, but just, all those things that impact the household and help a player feel good about themselves again and kind of get back on track again.
So who, in late 80s, who championed the PAF? Like, who fought for this and said, we need to have this?
Maybe the all-time greatest former player ever, Gene Upshaw. And the name stays on the foundation to pay homage to him. But he had the vision that former players needed something like that after the game.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
He had the foresight, man. That's why it's called, the Gene Upshaw Professional Athlete Foundation. So that's amazing. Nolan, the former players department? You guys do a lot of stuff, man. Tell me a little bit of the history. I know you've been involved, even as a player, on the executive committee and all that kind of stuff. So just tell me a little bit of the history of the former players department and how you guys continue to do the work that you do.
Well, I'll give you all the way back to when I was a player rep, and we were brought in to visit the old offices in D.C. And Frank Wolschitz was the original me in the former player services department. And I remember going in, and I remember Frank saying to me, "You got a long time to go before you get here, but when you do, we're going to be here for you guys." And he told us about former players and all the things that they were trying to do for us. Fast forward to Dre being in that chair before he took over to be an executive director of the Professional Athletes Foundation, and then me. So you're looking at the second and third of former player services. And that just goes to show, for the time that we've been in this organization, how far we've come. Just the benefits and resources we've been able to develop. Andre be able to focus on taking care of guys in need, me focusing on opening up communications and opportunities, advocating for guys and making sure that we get increased benefits in every CBA. Those things are extremely important. The former player services department has always been integrally involved in making sure all those things, come to pass. We also make sure we fill the gaps. So Zamir's going to talk about the 2+, 0 to 1 credit season guys. We always talk about it. Everybody who was on the field was important. So whether you played it down, I'd say whether you played down in 25 years, the PA's worked hard to make sure that we have something for every single former player, so they feel like they've been a part of it because they have been a part of it since they got in the locker room. So building resources and opportunities for us like that have been a focus of us. At one point when I first started 15 years ago, we had maybe 2,400 guys that were engaged with us, and we knew where they were and what they were up to. Now we're over 15,000, and we're continuing to grow because it's important for us to know how many guys are doing what they're doing, and make sure we're connected to them, make sure that they have all the resources.
I think to your point about once you play in the league, once you sign a contract, you're part of the union, and I think obviously we all know certain years trigger certain benefits. We know that, but the union, being a member of the union, the only thing triggers that is being a member. Tell me how important it is that you open the doors for anybody that stepped into this NFL fraternity, that you continue to have resources for anybody, whether no matter how many years they played.
It's extremely important, right? I mean, when we're in the locker rooms and we're playing, right, there's nobody's walking around with an icon over their head. This ain't The Sims, right? No one's walking around with an icon saying, I play for this, I play for this, I play for this. We treat everybody the same. And I think that's extremely important. Is it all going to be equal? No. And I think as grown men, we understand that it's not going to be an equal thing, but making sure that we have something for the blood and sweat that everybody's given, I think is extremely important as well. And it shows how much, as an organization, we care about every single former player, whether you make it to two, whether you make it to vesting. We're a part of building this thing, and just having something there, being able to reach out and wrap our arms around all of our guys and their families, regardless of what level it is, I think it's extremely important. It shows the power of how much we all care and the power of this organization and how we'll continue to grow this way.
Absolutely. Zamir, new executive director of the trust. You're the executive director now. You were the managing director before that, and you started as a program manager, right? So you've been there since day one of the trust. What's the importance of the trust as far as how it was created, and what was it created for?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit like the history.
Yeah.
The history is important to a lot of players, to me and everybody else, but I would love to hear the history of the trust and how it came to be.
So the trust came about, or at least the impetus for the trust, 2011 collectively bargaining agreement. So we secured the funding in that agreement. Post the signing of that agreement, the NFLPA, along with various subject matter experts, current and former players, had created what we now know as the trust benefit. We say the driving question around the trust was simple. Why do some former players succeed and others struggle post-career? Where did that question take us? The vision: provide world-class benefits and services, career development, educational advancement, financial education, health and wellness resources, as well as community and connection to help players thrive post-career. That's where we are today. That remains our core. That's what drives what we do on behalf of players.
So we're going to start back with you from evolution. How have you seen, since you've been there since the beginning of the organization, how have you seen it grow? What changes have come to the trust as far as, that first, obviously the mission is the mission and that will never change. I think we're all here for the same mission. But how has the trust evolved and grown since you've been there?
From where we started with the trust, given that knowledge on the outset from the conversations with subject matter experts, NFLPA staff, as well as players, we started with what we knew at that time. When we launched, as you know, we began to discover gaps. One of those key gaps or key opportunities was players who struggled with mental health as well as substance abuse. When we started the trust, we did not provide inpatient care. Now we do so at a very high level, utilizing two very outstanding providers in the space, Menninger Clinic, current treatment facility as well. We're seeing over 50 players a year, significant impact for those players and their families. And that's just an example of how we take player needs and interests, leverage those needs and interests to create opportunities for players to thrive.
And I think it's important to know too, as we all in former player space, right? So how, I'm a former player. If I'm a former player, a young guy, and I see three different executive directors up here for former players, tell me how, what's my entry point? I'm deciding I want to retire. And there's three different executive directors, like I said, for former player resources. Where do I start? Like, where do I go for what, and where do I start this journey for me? Anybody could take that question.
I mean, I'll start first. Just being honest, you can enter through any of the three doors. In reality, that's a tough question. That's a tough question for us. So typically for me, I get the players that end up calling the plan office that want access to their 401ks because they're having financial difficulties. So they're tracked to me. But I think the important thing is because we all work so closely together, we know how to get players to the right place. I don't know that the PAF receives most of the calls, I think by design, because the trust is really the thing that's going to tie all this together from now through the future because of their robust services. I think ideally for players, the right thing to do, if you're vested, is to engage the trust so that you get attached to that program manager. And I'm a former player, I have one, and I love my program manager. He's awesome, and I talk to him regularly. But to attach to that program manager to help walk you through what's next.
Yeah, I would echo that. Ideally, a player will walk off the field and walk into the trust, and that program manager is going to be your quarterback. And when I say be your quarterback, that person is going to help you dictate where that ball goes in your life, career, education, health and wellness, but an individualized approach based on your needs and interests at that time. And we'll grow with you. The benefit will walk alongside you for a lifetime. So as your needs and interests change, so will the benefits that we can provide to support you.
I like that. So it sounds like the trust from a standpoint of, entering, if I'm just recently retired, entering the trust, you're going to get me where I need to go.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Depending on where I'm at. I remember we used to use the term meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
Coming in there and entering into the trust should be my entry point as a former player. And then that way I can kind of understand all things, right, and get me to where I need to go.
Absolutely. Our program managers are well educated and knowledgeable of the ecosystem of services that are provided. And they will leverage all the supports, whether it's former players, whether it's PAF, whether it's the Legends community, to support that player.
It should be automatic.
Yeah, and so I know perfect world that happens, right? But it's not a perfect world. So I know Nolan, people come to you, Andre, people come to you straight away. So how does that work? I come to you, Nolan. I want to get involved in former player services, and I'm coming to you. So how does that work? How do you guys work together? Because people don't understand, like, we all work together. You guys all work together to make this happen, right? You triage if you need to, do whatever you need to do. So how does that work? I'm coming to you because I might have a relationship with you, or somebody told me from a chapter that I'm coming to talk to Nolan. How do you get me to the right place?
Well, it's a synergistic relationship, right? So as my staff has been outstanding at, is we always funnel. It's kind of like it's an oracle, right? Because not every single player is going to be 2 or 3, right? So we talked about the 0 to 1s. So no matter what, whatever the entry point is, our job is to make sure they get to where they're going. Ideally, no matter what happens, I should feel if I'm a current player right now at 10 years in the league and I'm out, I should know automatically that I should be calling and get a program manager. That should be automatic. But, life doesn't work that way. So you have to make sure that you create a safety net. And I think all 3 of us are part of how that safety net works. So no matter what entry point is, we're going to guarantee that you're going to get to where you're going to go and make sure that they're described exactly what's going to happen. But we do need to get into a space where automatically, if I hit 2, I'm calling the trust. And I think we're all working together to make sure, and with Don and his team, we're all working together to make sure that that actually happens. But when it doesn't, remember, we train everybody. This is the NFLPA. We train everybody to do that 800-372-2000, right, to make sure. So all current players are geared towards that. So we have to make sure that there's a landing spot inside. And so that's where we all work together. And the teams were always talking to each other and making sure that we all know. But the bottom line is we know X is X. You're 2+.
Yeah.
You have emergency resources. So it's, we all work synergistically together to make sure that works right.
So just to add to that, one of the key strategic objectives of the trust is to promote early adoption. Nolan mentioned at 2 years a player should know that he calls the trust when he transitions. 2 of the things that we're focused on with players in the locker room right now is, one, by CBA, players have to participate in transition or economic education. I believe their first 3 years in the league. We're trying to become a part of that mandatory education so that players are educated about the trust when they're in the league. Second, as of last season, I joined the NFLPA when they would go and have the NFLPA team meetings, and I would introduce the trust to those players in that meeting to let them know how we're going to support them post-career. And then last, we provide what's called the free agent benefit. So any player with 2 or more credited seasons, he's not under contract, he can actually go to one of our partners, train up to 12 months with the idea of getting back in the league. But if he doesn't get back in the league, we've already created that natural path to transition. So I think those 3 things will help us promote early adoption to players, therefore getting players directly into the trust post-career.
Got you.
So think about this. If when I guarantee you at year 10, we were talking about this earlier, at year 10, I'm not sure I'm done, but if I know that there is a recently released free agent program for me to take advantage of, I guarantee you that's where I'm going. And guys need to know that exists because, that first 48, you just don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah. And to have a resource to where not only am I going to be able to train, but I'm actually going to learn about the former player benefits, and also I think that's extremely important. It's an underutilized resource. Yeah. Guys need to know that.
And think about that the way that works, right? So, for example, we just brought on Bommarito Sports. And within the last 2 months, 13 players have went to Bommarito Sports who were not under contract and now back in the league. What does that mean for those players who utilize the trust and go back in the locker room? They become an echo chamber for the benefit, right? So the best way to get players into the benefit, as we know, is vis-a-vis other players. So now we know we got 13 players in that locker room saying, yo, this is how I got back in. You should do this if this happens to you, or if they see the guy who had that unfortunate experience that we may have all had, when it's time to leave that locker room with that trash bag, right? Hey, make sure you call the trust.
So to that point, I know from my experience being there, it's not always as easy as it sounds to get somebody to the logic, right? The logic pattern that you're talking about, to say, okay, I'm done. Let me go through this part of this, to go to here and then get, because a lot of guys don't know that they're done, all right? Or the free agent program is not about them being done. It's about them trying to get back into it, right? So as this being a former player benefiting their current players, how do you get them to buy into that, right? Like, okay, this is the trust. We're a former player benefit, but we're offering you this free agent program. How do they perceive that? As like, I ain't done. Because I know that sometimes they're like, I ain't done yet, but you talking about some former player benefit and the trust. And I remember the question used to come up too, is if I use this and if I use the trust benefits, can I go back and play and all that kind of stuff? Address that for me.
Yeah. So if a player uses it, yes, he can go back into the locker room. But it is an individualized approach. Players decide when they're ready, right? One of the things we do know is you can go to school for a lifetime. You have a very short window to maximize your experience on the field. And we know that's their primary ambition. Right. So we try to help them meet their primary ambition. But we have very skilled program managers. Most have at least a master's degree in human services, psychology, social work. All are well experienced in working with players. So those conversations should be happening routinely because they're routinely checking in with players and helping players or helping to empower players to make their own decision, hopefully at the right time.
Right.
But let's remember, the player decides when that's the right time. Now, we sometimes worry if his right time is the right time, but all we can do is empower him to make that decision.
See, for me, I wasn't going to Bombarino. I was running for some ice bags. I was done. I would have, for me, and I'll just be honest, the transition was difficult. I probably could have used all three branches of this, but for the trust, I probably would have leaned into, the next career stuff and understanding that and adding on to my education. For what Nolan does, I would have needed the chapter. I didn't understand it back then, but I would have needed the chapter. And who couldn't use a little financial assistance, when you go from, making a lot of money, to no money. So, together it all makes sense. Just being realistic for the players. If you don't ever pick up the phone and call, you just don't know. You just don't know what's available to you.
So Professional Athlete Foundation, let's dig into that a little bit. So you do financial assistance, but you guys do so much more, right? And I think that's something that people don't know as well, right? It's like, oh, I'm not going in on any financial assistance. And sometimes you have to be a certain kind of player to put your pride down, even call the PAF and say, okay, I need help. But you guys do a lot of stuff. Besides the financial assistance, dig into something else that you think is very important that you guys do.
I think,
for players.
Thanks. So I think some of the other services that we have, it's important because, again, if you have one credited season or no credited seasons, you're still a part of our ecosystem. You're still a member, right? You're still a member. So, but if you need things, we're the group that provides that. So we do have our own version of our cardiovascular screenings in a long time partnership with the Living Heart Foundation, and we do those screenings 4 times a year. It's a full cardiovascular workup that you get done, in a couple of hours. And anyone from around the country, if you can make it there, you can get screened. And we've also added the wives to that part as well. What's the point of me being healthy if my wife can't get a physical? So we do the wives as well.
I think that's a big deal, and I ain't trying to cut you off, but I think that's super. I don't want to brush over that like that's lightweight because that's, to take care. You're trying to make households whole, right? And so you can't make the household whole and only take care of this former player. We don't know where he's at in his career. We don't know if he's the head of the household, like running it, or if he's down here and needs help. But the wife plays such a big role in our lives, right? And for them to be healthy and strong is super important as well. So I've always wanted that to be an event. That's the first time I've heard that that is the case. So, man, dig into that a little bit, because I think, and all of us could chime into that. I think all of us, like, how important is that our wives or our counterparts have we seen in the work that we do working with players, how important a role of a wife is, or a spouse or a partner, in making sure that they're healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically in this transition journey as well.
Yeah, if I can build on that just a little bit, then I'll pass the baton. That ideal came from a former player, so we're always listening, we're always ready to take those good ideas and put them to action. So that came from a former player. When we started to add the wives, it was slow at first, but now almost every player brings their spouse to the screening, so that's exciting. Also, one of the things that we've tried to do is try and open up players' minds to just total wellness. So, just reconnecting with exercise, yoga, breath work, and things like that. And that's always fun. And those are easy programs to put on. And certainly the spouses and significant others are welcome to participate in that. So we've had some success building some programming like that. But it's really about what this event that we're here this weekend, the Summer Getaway, is about. It's like, building building a community of former players, and that's the spouses, the kids, the grandkids. It's all of that that we're trying to just bring to the front.
Right.
That's that good feeling.
Yeah, Hannah, you brought up a great point. In my household, and people who know me know that my team is extremely important. I call it Team Harrison. And my wife, that's my rock, right? So her health, my health, both of us have to be at our peak performance to make sure that our kids and the things that we want to accomplish in our lives are going to be. And she's always talked about it. So it's like, listen, she was one who wanted me to retire when I was still playing, because she saw the injuries and the damage and everything was starting to happen to my body. And she was like, we have to be, when we get done with all the responsibilities we have, I want us to have fun. I want us to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we can't do that if we're not both healthy. So she's always on me about mine. I'm always on her about hers.
Right.
And having our spouses in that is extremely important.
Right.
And for the Living Heart Foundation to be able to incorporate our spouses into that, for those guys that can take advantage of it, I think is a very powerful testament. It's the whole family.
Right.
And I think that's important for us as well.
Absolutely. And I know, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just, echo what they said. The wife, the family is core to the players' ecosystem. There are other benefits that we provide that also helps the wife benefit as well as the kids benefit. Through our YMCA benefit, it's your entire household. Through the Cigna benefit, it's your entire household. One of the things that we do in our household trying to normalize mental health is we all go through therapy. Some individuals, some as a group, wife and children. Because when I stand in front of players and I promote that benefit, I want to be the horse's mouth, right? Why is the wife important? For someone like me who's been married over 25 years, when she hurts, I feel it. When she's struggling, I'm struggling, right? We're an ecosystem. So the stronger that ecosystem is, the stronger the family is,
Correct.
The stronger the unit is.
So I know you brought up mental health, and I know we're gonna dig into that. Might as well do it now. From a mental health standpoint, that became it's obviously a lot of the work that we do. It's like we keep saying we, like I'm still there. A lot of the work that you guys,
It's still weird. We're doing that.
a lot of the work that you guys do as far as mental health, and I know when I started back in 2013, the word mental health and what that meant and the resources were very scarce, and talking about mental health was scary. It was also like you can't really talk about it out loud, and it was a stigma on it and all that kind of stuff. You fast forward 2025, we're light years away than where we were to being able to openly talk about mental health and how that affects you and how it affects you in your transition. So, I've seen the resources just take leaps and bounds as well, as far as what you guys have been able to offer to former players in this transition when it comes to mental health. And Dre, I want to start with you. I mean, the PF, kind of like, some silent heroes also behind the scenes when it comes to mental health and helping people and doing that work. And I want to talk a little bit about that from your perspective. And then not just talk about it, but how do you triage players and help work with Nolan or the trust and get players to where they need to go?
No, that's a great question. We did some hard work back in 2009, 2010. we commissioned a depression study through the University of Michigan, and we learned through that study that there was a high prevalence of depression among former players. And it was more than 1,000 players participated in the study, so it was pretty robust. But from that point on, we knew that we had to have the right kind of staff to be able to deal with that. So we hired, a couple of master's level social workers to work with the players, just on the daily when they would call in. I'm an administrator, that's not my skill set. So when someone calls and they have a real problem, is it fair for me to try and triage them? I've learned some things over the years, but it was important to have someone clinical at the front of that conversation. So, just from that seed, so much has transpired, and we've really become an organization that cares about stuff like that. And I'll pass the baton, to Zamir, because we've really come full circle from just that small.
If I could just
that small
interject
offering.
just a little piece
Yeah.
of it is because on both sides of things, having mental health is extremely important. And so, when you hit the 2, we have that. But from the PA perspective, I was really impressed in the last CBA that we were able to negotiate benefits, mental health resources for non-vested players and under 2-year players. So even the 0 to 1 credit season guys get full family support, get the 8 free Cigna face-to-face visits. That's extremely, and it's for the whole families. So it's like that just goes back to the commitment of this organization to making sure that we put together resources for as many guys as we possibly can across the board. Like I said, it's not always going to be the same, but in this last CBA, for us to be able to negotiate benefits that actually do affect our 0 to 1s, I think was extremely important. It just shows that commitment.
We on the rise.